what needs to then fill some of this gap is training. You need to have enough training to have people out there who understand cybersecurity that can then work in these organizations, so they know when you do due diligence, what is it that they need to do. But even when we train our people, they won't have the deep expertise. We need to complement that with the private sector, the security experts in the private sector who can do very specialized things like vulnerability testing, security management, different skills that they can then come in and help companies manage the network. I realize with large companies, sometimes they recognize the danger, they can put in the resources, protect, and they know when something goes wrong, reputation damage can be quite bad. But the problem is the smaller companies, medium-sized to the small companies. First, they don't have the resources, they don't have the people, they don't have the money, and they don't know that there's a threat. That, to me, is the bigger problem that we face today. That the lack of awareness, the lack of ability to help the SMEs deal with it is a real problem. And one of the things I've been suggesting to operators, to ISPs, actually they all provide, all these SMEs all buy connectivity from the ISPs or the operators. The ISPs can actually do quite a lot to help them defend against threats. And so, well, of course, it's a cost to the ISPs as well to do this, so there's some conversation there about how to make a business case of it. But I think that is another area that we can do to help make sure the entire environment is better protected. Okay.
My question will be related to your last point on collaboration and cooperation. So I'm quite curious, how do you think about balancing between sharing information with the public in order to help public understand and raising awareness, but at the same time, as a company, you need to compete and you need to keep the confidentiality of some knowledge within your company. And as you have said before, that there are some publicly available knowledge coming from Cisco engineers and those scientists themselves. How do you see about these balancing issues?
That's a very good question, and actually quite a complex question. You think about all the different elements to it. Now, we publish information about threats because we want to make sure people are aware of it. But the process, that isn't actually the first thing we do. For example, when we realize that there is a vulnerability with a particular product because we detected it, we usually go to the vendor first to tell them there's a problem there, please try to fix it. A lot of major vendors do that. And then after a certain point in time, we publish it to make sure everybody knows about it and they take the steps to protect it. Now, the complication with publishing is that if you put out too much information, you're also helping the hackers know where the problems are. But if you don't publish it, people don't protect themselves against it, then people who know will be able to penetrate your network. So on balance, our belief is to publish it. At the very least, if the vendor decides not to do anything when you publish it, they will be under pressure to do something about it. So that we believe is the correct approach, which is to inform when there's a problem. So the reason we keep some information private is not because of the competitors, but it's actually, again, to make sure that you don't release the information too soon, that the bad guys can use the compromise before the fix or the rectification can be dealt with. Especially between companies and all that, we share information about problems that we find quite regularly. But with government, sometimes the question is not so clear. Certain governments are more open than others. Some are very willing to work, some are less willing, and some will not tell you. Right? So it's a different problem with government altogether when you deal with information. But there is some effort going on after what happened with Snowden and all those. There is a lot of effort going on in terms of just making sure people are aware of the threats, but also in terms of disclosing of vulnerable information. Even in the US, there's some work going on to try and make it such that even governments should disclose this when they can. But one other point I want to make when you were talking about the problem, helping public understand the threats is part of the education process. And when 20 years ago, when we had just simple problem with viruses, people sticking USB drives and disks and so on, we spent a lot of time then educating users not to do certain things. Like I said, don't stick in your USB drive. Don't click on bad links. The thing is that while that is necessary, we have also come to realize that the best attack out there will fool even the smartest user. Right? There was a time when the attacks will come in the form of saying there's a security update, Adobe needs an update, please click here to update. Actually, the security conscious people are the ones who tend to click those things, right? Because they think they need to patch. But that actually, visually on the thing when they click out, you can't tell when it's a real thing or a bad thing. It's an attack coming in. So even the most conscious person can be fooled. Phishing attack, they can tailor the attack to you so precisely that you will be fooled into doing it. But that comes back to where technology can make a difference. We internally at Cisco have a red team that does attacks on ourselves. Right? Separate from 350, separate from 250, there's another red team that just spent the time attacking against us. And there was one time they did a phishing attack against our own employees. So the first security people don't know about it, right? It went up, but actually within 10 minutes or so, the network technology has detected it and blocked it. So that when you click on the link, it doesn't do any harm. Now, within the day, after you send it, 5 hours later, 10 hours, the people are still clicking on it because they are fooled by the phishing attack. But the technology has blocked it. So even though you fooled the user, the threat didn't come in. So I mean, that's the way what I mean by different layered defenses need. Education alone is not enough. It's necessary, but it's far more.
Okay, we'll move on to the Q&A question. So the first question is, do you think developed countries have leverage in defending cyber attack due to the concept of big data?
Depending on when you say countries, do you mean governments or do you mean countries as in the companies in the country? But maybe let me put it this way, if you want to clarify again. So big data is definitely very important. And I mentioned just now, a lot of things that we can do, Cisco as a group in a company, we can do it because of the amount of data we have, the amount of analytics and the machine learning that we can do. And in fact, that's why sometimes we tell some of our customers, even if you're a whole country, you want to do this secure DNS thing that I mentioned, open DNS, if they say they don't want to connect to the rest of the world, they don't want to create an isolated network for their country itself. But unless they are pulling the threats from all around the world, that DNS is not going to be as effective as it can be. So the amount of data, it definitely gives you much better visibility. And the danger of it, of course, is that if you don't have that visibility, you may be the last one to know about the attack. That is obviously not good. But whether this is an advantage for developed countries versus not, really, the tools are available. You can get access to them, whether commercially or the free ones are available. And the companies around here, Cisco included, are more than happy to work with whoever is interested to help you defend your network. You may not be able to afford the high-end, the top-of-the-line things that give you your protection for $3.5, but there may be something cheaper in between that will make sense. And some of these things will already leverage a lot of the intelligence that's available out there, so it won't necessarily be disadvantage.
This next question will be the last question for this Q&A session, as time is running short, as our guest speaker, Mr. Seo Hong, has to leave early. So the question is it necessary for every company to hire expertise to deal with cyber attack, or is it enough that you purchase a good security product?
So the second one, buying good security product, definitely no. Right? The problem is not just that, it's not going to be one product. And you can have one product, you can still configure it wrongly and still it's as good as not having it. So definitely the product is not the solution. I sort of mentioned this about resources and capability earlier. I think for large companies, awareness about cybersecurity needs to be not just one or two experts. At the top level, the CEO and the board, they must have awareness of what needs to be done. For example, in Cisco, we regularly report to our own board how many attacks we get, how quickly we respond, and so on. So the board is actually tracking this information. And then, of course, you need to hire. So at the large company level, I think that is very necessary. The very top organization must have, and ought to have something like equivalent of chief security or chief information security officer that is responsible and reports to as high a level as the CEO. Make sure they do the right thing. The problem, like I said, is the smaller companies. The smaller companies can't afford to, it's too expensive, whatever reasons they have, they can't. We can train the people, at least if they wanted to hire, they can find one. but that one person will not be foolproof, it won't be an answer to everything because he only has limited knowledge. This is where I think industry and others must work together. Like I said, operators, ISPs can do more to help the smaller companies. The large companies can help themselves. It's the smaller companies that really need the help out there. And hopefully through some of the awareness that we do here, for example, that you can get the message and you can tell people you work with. First of all, this is a real problem, big problem, you need to deal with it. And if you don't know how to deal with it, talk to someone who knows how to do it. The last thing you want to do is do nothing about it, and then you don't know you'll be compromised. Whether they should well, okay, to me the government is another user. So not separate from the lawmaking side. As a government organization, whether you're running a ministry, an agency, you are like any other organization. You need the same defenses, and you need to have people within the organization knows that security is top of mind. And very often something like a cybersecurity agency may exist in the government that has that. But you see also that there are governments that don't have that. They may just have the, I guess right now in reality you have the Ministry of ICT, Ministry of Digital Economy, you've got ETDA sort of doing some of these things, a new committee coming in. But you don't quite have oversight across the agency that is ought to be in place for governments. But there are many other countries that are far worse along the line in terms of what they do. But as an organization, they can do the same things. The government as an organization can do a lot of things that private enterprises do. The problems that you face is similar. The difference I would say is that sometimes governments feel that they are super sensitive or super secretive, that they cannot do certain, or they cannot use certain technologies. I would say to those that really it's a risk management. I mean, you know the tools are out there. If you refuse to use it, that's your choice. But if there are options that you can do, then you do. But when the failure comes, you really have to bear with the brunt of it. The secure DNS example, I don't know whether you know in Singapore, they had about a year ago decided to separate the network. The email and the web computers within the government network is separated. And they said that they need to do that because of threats coming in through phishing. Right? But you think about that, what I described to you, the secure DNS solution, is a very simple way that they could have dealt with that problem. And the irony, not to criticize the government here, but the irony is that when they separate them, people started using thumb drives and different things like that. And I already told you how bad thumb drives are. So in a way, governments are like companies. They ought to do the same thing. They ought to have oversight. And in many cases, like here, the Prime Minister has a vested interest. In Singapore, the same thing, the Prime Minister has a vested interest. At that level, you have the awareness, you will probably get down.
I just want to add a question that you have said that for the contents, we should regulate the contents of the media. But some even say today, because of the encryption technology that improvement, the contents cannot be really regulated directly by the government. So many governments try to regulate the deeper in the infrastructure or the medium like the ISP instead of regulating the contents directly. So how do you see like technology would help in balancing this kind of this regime?
Content is a difficult problem. I mean, to start with, actually, one of the challenges that different countries see what is illegal content differently. So there is even no consensus about what is bad content, what is undesirable. And on top of that, like you said, if it's encrypted, it makes it doubly difficult. But I come back to the point is that when you want to make something illegal, I mean, because the content is bad, you define the content as being bad. Now, how you go after it, how you remove the threat, you may not have to do it through laws. You may not have to, there are different ways you can track down the problem and eradicate the problem. And you sometimes may also have to define what the problem is. So if it's, for example, point to point, there's only two parties involved, me sending to you, and there's some bad stuff in there. that may not be the biggest problem that the government needs to go figure out. What you want is those NAS applications on websites about how to build a bot. Those are the things that you must be able to take down. But those are very often much easier to find, easier to track down, easier to remove. And there are different ways you can remove content through whatever means you have. And so you need to define that first, that illegal, that content is illegal, and then you can find a measure to go. I don't think trying to twist our arms or trying to define funny, interesting ways or clever ways so that you can catch a particular instance is particularly effective. Because then someone will come along and find a different way to deliver it, and then that you have a new problem. So you got to start with what is it that is bad, and then find how best to take away the biggest problems.
There, we end up the question.
Sorry, just one quick question. As you mentioned, I mean, for me, for a public lawyer and public policy interested person, as you mentioned, cooperation and collaboration with governments and Interpol now, for example. Just one question: what does Cisco know, for example? What kind of internal policies or ethical standards does Cisco have with regard to cooperation with governments? Because in the past, IT firms, many IT firms around the world, Cisco included also, sometimes face allegations that they work with governments on projects that from, you could say, an individual rights perspective may have been a little bit problematic. So how does Cisco approach these topics? What are the internal guidelines in that regard?
That could be a topic of a brand new lecture. But I would start with, first of all, Cisco actually is in a different position as in the way the technologies that provide, different position from, say, the Google, the Microsoft, Amazon, because we don't usually host consumer content. We are the providers of technologies that enable the communications to take place. We, unlike some of those web or cloud service providers, they hold user content and then the law enforcement want to see what the content is. But the information we hold are not that kind of content. And on top of that, most of our customers are corporate customers, right? Again, not the targets of law enforcement. So we don't face the same kinds of pressure as you would imagine for Google, Microsoft, and others. We, like them, we publish a transparency report. If law enforcement queries come, we will publish them. But if you go to the website and look at it, the report is empty because no point coming to us. We don't have anything interesting for them to take to ask for. But having said that, the position is similar to the other countries. The request for access to data that is encrypted or protected really ought to go first to the owner of the data. So for us, for example, sometimes emails may come in, corporate emails. If you want access to a particular email because you're investigating an individual, go to the employer of the email of the employee and ask the employer. No point coming to Cisco because of all the server is not with us. Go to the end user to ask. And if that fails, then you can go into other ways. Where the problem with some law enforcement is that they go straight to the middleman and expect the middleman to do something. Often, we are not even holders of the key. Even if we wanted to, we cannot do a thing about it. So that's one perspective that needs to be addressed. The other one is also not maybe appreciate that there are different types of, different ways data are handled. There's data in transit. During transmission, the data is flowing, you want to intercept that. There's data at rest, as in data on the device that you want to get at. And there's data that's on the cloud that you can get at. And actually the measures to get to each of them are all very different. And really, sometimes you see that they use a blunt tool to be able to get at something that may not be the best case. So like in the case of the Apple one that you heard, San Bernardino one, actually the information was in the cloud. If they had gone to the cloud first, it would save themselves a lot of problems. They didn't lock the phone unnecessarily, unwittingly, that would have solved a lot of problems. So a lot of those things could have been prevented without it being such a big heated debate over privacy and all that. No one is disputing that law enforcement and public safety is important, but we can't do it at the expense of compromising all of the technology that's involved.
Thank you
for your insightful thoughts into what your understanding of cybersecurity and cybercrime is, Mr. Seo Hong. I would like to ask everyone to please give our guest speaker a round of applause. And on behalf of Thammasat University Faculty of Law LLB, we thank you for taking your time out to be here with us. Okay, now moving on to our second speaker, I would like to introduce Ajahn Thithirat Thipsam Ritkun, who will be our second speaker of the day. She is a lecturer at the Faculty of Law, Thammasat University, where she teaches public international law, human rights law, and media law. She is especially interested in the relation between market, technology, and human rights. Her current research focus is the area of freedom of expression, privacy, and internet governance, in which she also cooperates with civil society and the public sector to advocate for better legislations and policies. For today's seminar, Ajahn Thithirat will cover how privacy in digital context is different from traditional contexts and new challenges. She will also cover how should we as human beings, as students and professors, should think about state surveillance and privacy, how privacy can be compromised for the reason of public interest. And she will also focus on the concept of big data. Thank you, Ajahn Thithirat.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I think we have a very good basic of cybersecurity right now, like all those possible technology that will help us. And I'm quite thankful that the first speaker have introduced, have touched upon many points that actually law or legislation alone wouldn't help us to get through the problem of cybersecurity, but actually the technology itself might be the real solution. Part of my conclusion today will go into that point as well. But first of all, I would like to start from this slide. I think today when we talk about digital economy, when we talk about the new Thailand 4.0 concept, one of the basic thing that we wanted to happen in this digital economy environment is that we want the free flow of information. But free flow of information doesn't come only with the opportunities. Of course, it comes with risk. So let me look at the opportunity first. So for opportunities, of course, we have more market competition for private sectors, and that would help more information access happen to the citizens. So you have more choices, the consumer can benefit from this free flow of information. Think about those days when we didn't have like this e-commerce, online shopping. So when you want to buy like a new computer, you need to go to like Pantip or some places and you need to ask for advices from those experts. But right now, you can connect to anyone on the internet, and that would help you a lot. So that really improved our living right now. And of course, this is also the capabilities of data management, data use. So if there are a lot of opportunity to use the data in the future, and especially in the context of big data. I think I'll elaborate more on that. But at the same time, we have the risk of course, the security of the network. We are now using more and more. And as the first speaker said, it's not only about our computer, it's not only about our mobile phone, but it's also about the light bulb, about the car, about the refrigerator, the smart TV at your home. Any device can be connected to Wi-Fi, to internet right now. And it always collects the information about you and your families and who you love. So that also comes to the problem of privacy policy of each company and of course of each devices that you're now using as well. And the problem of the last risk that I would like to raise here is about the limited understanding of privacy and security problem. by people. So the first speaker also said that it is really hard to educate people to understand about the risk that is not coming yet, and it is not very visible to our eyes. So come back to the question of cybersecurity. The first speaker has mentioned that it is different from the idea of national security. It is different from the idea of cybercrime. So, but these might be some words that you might link to when you hear the word cybersecurity. Is it the same with national security? Yes and no. And I think Lasse will also elaborate on those public interests, including national security as well. And also, does it concern the surveillance system? Does it also concern the cybercrime? But I think the very important point that we should grip on when we talk about cybersecurity, as the first speaker said, is the actual security of the network that we're now using. So I would like to use this slide to give you the overview that when we talk about cybersecurity, what we should really focus on is what it is now protecting. So good cybersecurity should protect individuals. It should protect networks, and it should also protect the devices. So these are three things that cybersecurity should protect. So it's not only about the network alone, it's not only about devices in your hand alone, and it is also about the individuals who use them as well. So the final solution or the final goal of cybersecurity should be the protection of individuals who use these devices and networks, not only the network alone. So I think often we overlook this important point of protecting individuals. So this is the slide from Privacy International. I think it is quite inclusive in a way that we should think about cybersecurity from individual perspective as well. Okay, so how the cybersecurity is related to privacy. Is it the question of one or another, or is it not? So let me introduce you to the concept of privacy a little bit. So basically, it is not a very well-known idea in Thailand and in Asian society because of our collective characteristic of our society. But of course, people in modern will become more and more aware about privacy. But internationally, privacy is not a new concept anymore. It was first introduced as the right to be let alone, concerning your house, concerning your private space, that you should not be intruded without any good reasons. So that also include the arrest, the warrant to search that should be issued by the court, not by arbitrary authorities. But it is not only about the right to be let alone, the right not to be intruded by others, but it is also about the right to control your personal data. And this is actually linked to the freedom of expression, the freedom to develop yourself, and also the autonomy of you as a person, as an individual. Okay, so, but of course, privacy of data protection is not absolute, right? It can be compromised, it can be balanced with many other interests, including public health. So your personal data, your personal health record can be used in the research for public health. You know, in the same way that we might need to give up our data for the public health improvement. And of course, it can be compromised for the national security, for some law enforcement. If we need, sometimes the police need to get into someone's email in order to detect the terrorist attack or to punish the crime or to investigate about the crime. It might also be obstacle for some economic efficiency and financial regulation as well. But I will come back to this question again. This is always the competitive or conflicting relation between privacy and other concepts. But before we go there, let me put quite a quick way to think about privacy, about data privacy. So when we should concern about data privacy, usually in privacy law, we separate the concerns of privacy into 4 steps. First, when we collect the data from a person, and if that data is personal data, we should ask for the consent. We should have some good reasons. If we do not have consent, we should have some other good reasons to use or to collect that data. But it's not only about collection, it's also about the use, the processing of the data. And then when you share this data with the third person, either it is the one you work with in confidentiality or those public audience. So the share of personal data is also another step that would be a point, an important point that you should concern about data privacy. And lastly, the way you secure or you store that data is also another point of concerns as well. Okay, so with these 4 steps in mind, I would like to move on to a very basic idea of principles concerning privacy. So there are many laws, there are many rules. I mean, if you follow the privacy law and policy, you would encounter the OECD guidelines, the US federal government policy, the EU directive, or the new EU regulation, GDPR, which embrace a lot of principles. But basically, these privacy principles can boil down to the idea of consent and choice, first of all. So if you want to use someone's personal data, you should have consent. And that person should have choice not to use your service, not to give consent. Okay, so this is the first thing. Then the personal data collected must be used for specific purpose, limited purposes. So it should not be the blanket consent that you get the data and then you can use this for anything in the future. No, it should be used only within the consent that that data subject given to you. And then because of this limited purpose principle, the notice of these purpose should be done in clarity. This is one of the problems of the privacy principle today, because it's not very easy to understand the privacy policy or the terms and conditions that you see in many digital services today. I'll come back to this point later. But not only that, the privacy principle also embraces the idea of security as well. So, as I said before, privacy concern is not only when you collect or use the data, it is also about when you secure the data as well. So if you do not have the security of the network, of security of the devices that you use, you process those personal data, how can you protect the privacy of that person? So the security is one of the most important thing and one of the most difficult tasks for many companies, even though they have good privacy policy, like the first speaker said, if they don't have a good, the security system, even with the good intention of privacy policy, they cannot protect their customers' privacy because the security system itself is compromised. And with this security, we also have the idea of transparency. So if the security is compromised, you should have the data breach notification system that let the other knows that actually there is a risk, there is a threat towards privacy, towards the personal data set, and that should help the others to defend themselves in the same situation as well. Okay, and lastly, the idea of this one is quite new to the privacy principles, is the idea that we as the person, the data subject, the person who that data is related to, we should have the right to access how the company or how the government is using our own data. So that is another principle that try to balance between the right of the subject, of the data subject, and the benefits of the company or the government who use those personal data. Okay, with this privacy principle, can we come back to this? That actually privacy is not something that you should exchange or trade off with the security. It is something that should go hands in hand. Privacy and security and cybersecurity, we do not need to choose. We should have both. That should be my first conclusion for the relation of these two concepts. Then what I want to talk about is the privacy and cybersecurity in the current context of digital economy and big data. First of all, let me talk about this slide. What we want as basic infrastructure or basic features of the digital economy. So I list these 6 things, so maybe you can add more on my list. But the first thing I think we need the physical infrastructure, the access to high-speed internet, which, okay, I think our country, we have it, more or less we have it, at least in the urban area, everyone have access to this high-speed internet. There might be some problem in the rural area. We have the concept of digital gap, digital divide, that there are some people who cannot access to the internet, where all of transaction right now, they can happen in the internet. So those who cannot access will be left behind. So actually the digital divide become one of the goals of the sustainability goals of the UNDP as well. So this is the first thing. Next, if we have the access to the high-speed internet, we should have easy payment system. So easy and trustable payment system. So that should be the next thing. And that would be the basic infra, the basic physical feature. And then what we should have is about the prevention of cybercrime. We should have some law that punish the attackers or those one who try to compromise the cyber system. But at the same time, as the first speaker said, punishing people is not enough. Punishing the wrongdoers is not enough. We should have some standards to prevent the attacks. Well, we should work on the defense. And as the first speaker said, in the real security industry, preventing or defending is even more important than punishing the wrongdoers. So we have this. And then lastly, we should have the privacy law and privacy policy that can help us to have autonomy on our own personal data, how we would like our data to be used. Are we comfortable with the targeting advertisement? Are we comfortable with the feature that Google Maps select for us automatically? If you're happy, that's fine. But if you're not happy with that fact that some companies now using your personal data for some other commercial benefits or commercial purpose, you can refuse. So that should be the what privacy law and privacy policy protect you. And with that, you can still have the freedom of expression. And freedom of expression is not only about the right to say anything you want, but it's also about the right to innovate, the right to invest in the new innovation as well. And if we build the system without thinking about this freedom or the privacy issue, we might have a very strong and powerful system and network, but with some very inactive citizens who live there and be very passive to whatever offered by the foreign companies or by the governments. So I listed this 6 features in order to let you see that there might be some situation that the cybersecurity standard might go in a way that is not enhancing the privacy or freedom.
sometimes it might affect the freedom of expression or the privacy. The last question that I asked the first speaker about the contents regulation, that actually right now, because of the technology of security, the encryption security, it made contents on online contents become harder to regulate. So the government in the past can regulate directly on the contents, those who publish contents online. But right now, those contents, they are under the protection of encryption, and especially by the foreign companies outside the jurisdiction. So this is very hard for the government to attack the contents, the illegal contents directly. So they move to attack the intermediary or the channel or the medium of that contents instead. So that's what we have seen in section 15 of the Computer Crime Act, that the government tried to make the intermediaries like ISP, web host, or web board, or even Facebook become liable for the contents that go through their channel or their platform. So because of these kind of technology improvement, sometimes it does not really enhance the privacy. But I'm not saying that because of technology, therefore we should compromise something for that. We should, my direction is that we should use the technology to balance between those things that might be in conflict. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about big data. So quickly speaking, big data are defined by 3 V. First, volume. So the quantity of data allows more potential uses. Because we have so many data right now, we can aggregate them, we can use them in a way that we never be able to do before because of this volume. But volume alone would not allow the big data to be for any use. We need to have the velocity, the processing power of machine, of computer today that allows real-time effects. So think about the Panama Papers that I think you all have heard about the Panama Papers or the Paradise Papers, that they are a bunch of data, very, very big amount of data that would not be able to process in the past with the computer power in the past, and with that, or even they could try to process those data, maybe the result will come too late for the media to attack or to publish the news in the relevant time. So lastly, the last V is variety. The data sources of big data are very, very various. So it can be the data, the text, it can be the voices, it can be pictures. Like think about the face recognition features in your phone or in Facebook. Think about the news that actually smart TVs now listening to what you say in your living room in order to detect and work on targeting advertisement. So, but with these all sources of data, they can combine and allow the new potential use. So, I mean, smart city is one of the ideas that come with the big data, that we have many machines connecting to each other in the Internet of Things era, and our living will be improved within these. But then the problem is that, as the first speaker said, not all of these machines that are connecting to each other are sophisticated enough to protect you as for the problem of security. And then your data might be compromised somewhere in this smart city. But of course, with this smart city, it creates a lot of opportunities. For example, if we put the camera and voice recognition device in the traffic junction. It can even detect the crime before the crime itself happens by combining voices, pictures, video, and the volume of noises at that place.
You were talking about privacy in smart city. It got me thinking about China's new internet policy, what they had implemented, the surveillance system. It made me think of a question: how will this security system affect the individual's freedom of expression, their privacy, their private rights, when this surveillance system basically captures on their facial data, the clothes they're wearing, their daily life habits, where they walk, how they drive, what speed they drive in. So how would it affect freedom of expression?
Yeah, so for China News that they are now developing the project of social credit project that will detect behaviors of people in the society and tracking how the citizens are complying with the government policies and also law regulations, and use these data to judge and assess the behavior of their citizen. In the meantime, like when you apply to, for example, establish a new company, the tax privilege that you might get might be depending on your behaviors being monitored by the government itself. The project itself is now under construction, but there is one company called Sesame Credit, which is actually implementing this project to some of their customers and use this credit with some services such as the dating website. So they use this credit as an evaluation of a person in some other services, and this might be the base for the development of the whole social credit system of China in the future. So it's like the one episode in the Black Mirrors, Netflix Black Mirrors, where everyone rating in their device every time you see someone's face. So that might happen. So it is the possibility or opportunities of the big data era. It can be used to prevent crime. It can be used to surveil people. It can be used to create more opportunity to protect people as well. For example, there are some projects that use your mobile phone, mobile data, and detecting the pattern of the pattern of defection of malaria, because that is the way you can detect people behaviors at the same time as detecting how these epidemic diseases distribute themselves among people in the society. So it can be used for very good reason and for very bad reason for the freedom of expression as well. So, the point is that it's not only about the government, it's also about the private sectors as well. So there are so many private sectors today that collecting your own data through devices and services that you use with them. And they assume that you agree to these collection of data. You click I agree button.
So if I understand correctly, the privacy protection model that we are having right now is based on the notice and consent.
Yes.
And that you've been told, like you mentioned, that you can be told that what data is being collected, and then you click on accept in some knowing or meaningful way. And with the Internet of Things, basically everything is collecting data and always on the notice and consent model. Like, since it's basically collecting data all the time, it seems like this model doesn't work anymore.
Yeah, it's just the question that I would like to talk about as well, in the sense that right now consent is kind of the base card you can use in collecting, using, sharing, and securing anyone's information. When you apply for any service, you need to sign that I agree. You might, for some good services, you might have some chance to say, okay, I do not agree with this. You might have some choices, but it's not very often. Often happen is that you need to agree to all of them.
So it's like the data collection in nowadays it's inherent in the operation of multiple devices that we are encountered with, right? And so we need to move beyond this traditional notice and consent model, right? And to a model that is much more robust, understanding of privacy that talks about collection limits, use limits individual access, and control over